All right, everybody, welcome to this week's Corn Belt Umpires Zoom Lunch Clinic. My name's Jake Samp, joined with Connor Singheisen and Jason Vaith today. Today we're doing something a little different. We have Brad Haar, who is a college baseball umpire working with us, and he's going to talk about ball status and base awards. We have some other college umpires throughout the year that are going to come on and do a couple different presentations. Just gets them involved, and you don't have to sit and listen to Connor and I every week. So without further ado, I will turn it over to Brad.
All righty. Do I need to click anything at all to show? Are you seeing my screen at all?
Nope, not yet.
No. Okay. There we go. Okay. Okay. I lost my microphone when I did that. Share audio. There, can you hear me now?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. There. Now, are you seeing my screen now?
Yep, you're good.
Okay, great. Okay. So yeah, today's ball status and base awards. Um, as we go through this, remember to keep your microphones off. If you have a question, jump in anytime. I'm very comfortable with interruptions. Um, if you want to put something in the chat box, go ahead and do that. And we'll go from there. So the outline, basic outline today is ball status, some very basic base awards for 1 to 4 bases, base awards when the pitcher throws a live ball out of play, base awards when an infielder or an outfielder throws a live ball out of play, and we're going to discuss a couple scenarios when, again, a live ball is thrown out of play or when time is called and play is suspended. So starting with ball status, Rule 501 is pretty darn simple. Umpire calls play, points the ball into play. The ball is alive and remains in play until such time that an umpire calls time. And I always kind of figure that last part there at the umpire's call of time suspending play was added after it says legal cause, because sometimes we call time perhaps when we shouldn't, and it doesn't matter. Once we call time, that ball is dead, play stops, play is suspended. So in OBR, the definition of a live ball is very simply, and I should back up for a second and say that today's presentation is intended for new umpires and for guys like myself who have been around for years but haven't necessarily had some of the formal training or haven't had our noses in the book as much as we maybe should over the years. So that's the purpose of today's presentation, knowing that we'll get some insights from some of the guys that have been around longer or have been more committed to the to umpiring, maybe is another way to say it. But a live ball, it can be a pitched ball, a batted ball, or a throwing ball. But it's live and in play. Once the umpire gives the order, we're ready to go. What I want to mention on the part about calling play is, especially younger umpires need to remember that every time the ball time has been called and play has been suspended, we need to remember every time to point that ball back into play. We don't necessarily have to say play every time, but your partner in the field especially needs to be aware when you're pointing that ball back into play. And a good example of that is a couple of weeks ago at a 12-year-old tournament, guy on first base, a foul ball had been just hit, and pitcher has the ball in his hand. The partner has not put the ball back into play yet. And you know what's going through that kid's mind. He wants to throw over to first base and throw that guy out at first base. Of course, he did that. Play was still suspended. And I knew that because I was working with a young guy that knew you point the ball back into play. So I knew time was still called at that point. So just a little reminder on that we need to do that every time play is suspended. We have to point the ball back into play. At the call of time, of course, play is suspended. The ball is dead. Ball cannot legally be pitched, batted, or thrown at that point in time. And again, that's pretty basic stuff right there. When time is called, base awards, outs, runs can only be initiated or granted by an umpire.
Hey,
Anything
Brad.
to add on that, Jake, or anybody?
Yep. The one thing that I would add, and this is a pet peeve of mine that I see happen a lot, especially with new umpires. And we're gonna have a little biology lesson too with it. Baseballs can't breathe, therefore they can't become dead. And I realize that it's semantics for the most part. But I hate when I hear umpires on it, like a hit by pitch or a ball that goes out of play where they go, dead. What's dead? It wasn't breathing to begin with. Like, am I going to run out and grab the baseball and start doing CPR to it? No. Time. Always time. It's never dead. Call time. So I know you have that on your site, but I really want to emphasize call time.
Yep. And that's a good one, Jake, because I'm hearing that obviously the last couple of years more. We want to get that terminology of dead ball, out of our language, and as you read through the manual, it uses that terminology so much. So especially early in the season, it's so darn easy to let that sneak in. I did it a couple of weeks ago. Where were we at? Orange City there. And first batter, the ball hit the kid in the foot. I immediately said, time, dead. And as soon as I said it, I knew what was coming. And my mentors over on the side said, did you just call that a dead ball? So it's just, it's language we want to move away from. What players and coaches and fans understand is the word time. That's what they understand. So you're right. So throughout this presentation, I will try to use that terminology.
If you go into your handy dandy NFHS book, Rule 621 says, quote, time shall be called by the umpire and play is suspended when A, the ball becomes dead. So we have a rule book that says you call time, not dead ball.
Okay. Appreciate that. And why is that important? Or not the word, not that, but why is when we call time, why is that important? And I was happened to watch the Duke and Coastal Carolina game on Sunday. And in the second inning, the score was 0-0. Duke had a guy on second base, 1-1 count on the batter. The pitcher spiked the ball at the front of home plate, and it, immediately took that drive over top of the catcher's head. Batter had a partial swing, a check swing. It appeared he may have fouled it off. The umpire jumped from behind the plate, immediately called time. But you could see he was thinking, what the heck did I just see? And in the meantime, the runner from second had gone to third. Duke coach comes out and says, that wasn't a foul ball. He didn't hit it. So he's having that argument. The three umpires get together, decide what they wanted to call, or what the proper call was, maybe is a better way to say it. They meet again with the Duke coach, who is still very animated. They finally send him back to his position, back to the dugout. U3 goes over to the Coastal dugout, right in front of the Coastal dugout, talk to their coach, who now is mad and has all sorts of guys from the dugout yelling because they don't like what's coming. What they ended up calling, anyway, to make a long story short, was that it was not a foul ball. But since time was called, all play stopped. That runner that made it to third base had to go back to second base. So now you've got Duke ticked off because their runner's back on second base, not third base, after what was technically a passed ball. And you've got the Coastal side mad because they've got now 2 balls and 1 strike instead of 1 ball and 2 strikes. So the point being with it was, as soon as he called time, that play stopped. No runners were going to advance. And it's just for me, it made a point in my mind as I was working on this of how important it is for us to be aware of where players are when we call time, because that will make a difference. And that, don't always call time too quick on delayed dead balls. Make sure we let it play out. So there's points when you let the ball play out before you call time. But okay, I did want to mention this is not necessarily a dead ball scenario or directly, but it is. Traditionally, an appeal play is made before you call time, or it's made after we put the ball back into play, not while time is called. However, I want to point this out for the younger guys, that in the Fed rules a couple years ago, they modified that rule, and a coach or a player can, while time is called, they call it a dead ball appeal. It's Rule 8-2-6C, and they can simply state during the timeout, I want to appeal that the batter runner missed first base, or I want to appeal that the guy left third early. They do not have to physically throw the ball or touch any base. They just simply verbalize it, and we as the umpire will make the proper call accordingly. So that is a change, not something that we're used to. I think that's something that very few, at least that I've seen, very few coaches are familiar with. And they will still have them go through the traditional methodology. My approach is, in between innings, I will then talk to a coach and explain to him how he could have done it and try to educate him for the future. I'm typically talking the younger levels here, but that's my methodology, or my best practice is to try and teach the coach at that point. But anything else on the appeal stuff there that I threw in? Okay. And Jake, just so you know, I'm not seeing any of the screen stuff other than my presentation.
Mhm.
So I'm not seeing if there's anything in the chat or
Yep.
whatever. So if something
Yep. I
pops
got the
up, give
chat
me
for
a
you.
holler. Okay. Uh, just very briefly, we're going to walk through 1, 2, 3, and 4 base awards, some common actions that will cause runners to advance a base or to be awarded a base. Uh, for a one base award, as all of us know, a balk, all runners are going to get one base. Uh, if there's a batter is hit by pitch, 4-ball walk, intentional walk, all runners will advance if they're forced to advance. We know that type of stuff. So those first ones in white are, pretty clear. Um, Maybe catcher interference on the batter. That's one of those that I mentioned earlier. That's a delayed dead ball. Um, let's say you have a guy at second base, catcher interferes with the batter swinging, he still hits the ball, it dribbles out to the pitcher who throws the batter out at first, but the guy on second advances to third. One out. You know, uh, the offense at that point has a choice that they can make. They can uh, have the runner back at second base and the batter at first base, or they can accept the out and have a runner on third base with 2 outs. So they get that option. It's that delayed dead ball. I know I have to admit, I personally called that wrong for many years. I killed it immediately. Um, so we have to be aware again of those delayed situations before we don't call time too soon. It's kind of like on football, you can always come back and correct it, put runners where they need to be, but once you call time, you aren't going to give them a base they maybe would have gotten if you had not called time. Hopefully that makes sense.
Hey, Brad, one thing to clarify,
Yes.
you brought up a really good point about the finer points of the catcher's interference rule. One of the biggest myths surrounding the catcher's interference rule is that the same outcome where you have this option applies specifically to balks as well. And that is not the case. So what I will tell you, because we're going to be doing an interference topic, we're going to be doing an interference presentation here in the next couple weeks. What Brad said about the catcher's interference rule is correct. Don't let the option be taken. And so, or as it pertains to a block, on a block, if all runners, including the batter runner, get one base, the block is ignored. Now that is OBR and Legion only, not high school, because high school is an automatic dead ball. And then the other thing with catcher's interference is, and Connor, you're gonna have to help me with this because I think it's different in high school. As it pertains to the option, we assume the result of the play, correct?
Enforce the interference and let them choose to take their play if they want.
Okay.
So
don't offer or go ahead. I'll let you
play finish. Time. Let's play finish. And if there's an out made, we're going to enforce the interference. So no matter what happens on the play, let's say there's an out on that play. Time. That's catcher's interference. Point to the catcher. Or the batter first, advance people if necessary, is forced. If everybody advances and there's no outs, then just pretend like it didn't happen. Because there's no, if everybody advances safely on that play, then the penalty for interference is to nullify the interference. or obstruction rather, because catcher's interference is obstruction.
Right.
So we're going to do whatever is necessary to nullify the obstruction. If everybody advances and nobody's put out, the act of the obstruction has already been nullified by the actions of the players. And so if we have an out recorded on that play, enforce the interference, make the coach come out and take the option if they choose. But essentially what you're doing is saying, this is, if there's an out recorded, your best option is to have no outs and runners on base. And they may come out and change their mind, but at least you did your part and told them this is what you should do. And then if they choose, they're like, okay, well, we played it 2 runs and we're willing to trade a run for an out. Okay, cool. We'll just reverse what I just did and call it good.
The other thing too is I don't give them the option. We're just going to enforce the interference. The onus is on the coach to come out and exercise that option. That's what I got.
Okay. And that's a good example of this whole discussion could blossom into a month's worth of discussions because there's so many little nuances that each one creates its own point that needs to be covered. So in addition, on the one base awards, as we continue, I want to point out the last 2. And we're going to cover these a little bit later with actual scenarios. But when the pitcher delivers a legal pitch from the rubber and the live pitched ball goes out of play. So he throws the pitch, it ricochets off the catcher, goes out of play. All runners are going to advance 1 base from time of pitch because he's touching the rubber. If it's ball 4 in the batter, he advances to first. If it's strike 3 on the batter with, in fact, I need to get clarification on this. If it's strike 3 in the batter, you still have the rule of it has to be less than 2 outs, nobody on first before he can advance, correct? If the ball goes out of play in the pitch on strike 3?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, so all that still applies. But if it's nobody on first base, ball goes out of play on strike 3, he gets first base. The other part and we're going to cover this, is again, while the pitcher is in touch with the rubber, he's in contact with the rubber, he throws the ball to a base, and that live ball goes out of play. It's, again, considered time of pitch because he is in contact with the rubber. That's extremely important as we look at our scenarios a little bit later. 2 base awards as well, pretty basic stuff. We all have number 1, what we grew up knowing as the automatic double. Ball goes into the outfield, sticks in the fence, goes under the fence, bounces over the fence, whatever. That's time of pitch. And you'll notice on the left-hand side, as I've written these up, all of these I have time of pitch, time of the infraction, or time of throw that we have to be aware of. Numbers 3 and 4, this is a live throwing ball, not a batted ball, but a live throwing ball. So guy on first base, bottom of the last inning, the winning run is on first base. Catcher throws down to back pick him. The ball goes out into right field. The right fielder, not wanting that guy to score or even get to third, takes his glove and he throws his glove at the ball. Now, he can throw his glove at the ball all day, but once his glove touches that ball, you have an immediate time, and 2 bases are awarded from the time that glove hits the ball, time of infraction, or time somebody uses an illegal glove. It's 2 bases from the time of the infraction. And the last two I want to touch on, because we're going to cover these a little bit more in depth, is again the first throw by an infielder after the pitch, and that live throwing ball goes out of play. That's from time of pitch. Okay, first throw by an infielder, it's time of pitch. And for any subsequent play by an infielder, or for any throw by an outfielder, and the live throwing ball goes out of play, it's from the time of throw. And we're going to cover these very specifically in a couple minutes here. 3 base awards. The main one I wanted to point out was, again, if you have a fair batted ball this time, not a throwing ball, but a batted ball, and it makes contact with that illegal equipment or thrown equipment, it's 3 bases again from the time of the infraction. So, and 4 base awards are pretty much, they're all time of pitch, all home run related type things. The last category for making base awards is umpire judgment. The first one was on our test, on the college NCAA test this spring, and that was spectator interference. And let me give 2 quick scenarios. So you've got a batter at the plate. You've seen this kid run before, and he's fast. You've seen him turn many a double into a triple. And he hits that ball, gets past the first baseman. It's a fair ball going down the toward foul territory on the fence, and a spectator reaches out and touches the ball. In your judgment, you believe, had that ball gotten all the way to the corner where it was headed, he would have gotten third base. You give him third base. That's best judgment of where you think he's going to be. Now, that same kid up to bat, but now you've got a big old first baseman, a gimpy first baseman at first base running, and that same ball goes out. That runner on first base is going to be lucky to make it to third base. So the point is that even though you can't, you award the base based on that front runner. If you think the farthest that front guy, that guy on first base, was going to get is third, then that batter runner is only going to get second base. You never award it based on, well, that guy on second would have gotten to third, so I'm giving the other guy first. No, it's based on that front runner, our best judgment. You know, similar with obstructed runner, most commonly it's the guy rounding first, right? He runs into the first baseman. You know, I would say over the years, I've probably kept as many guys at first or more maybe than I've given second base. On rare occasions, very rare occasions, I've seen a guy, I've had placed guys over to third, but that's been pretty rare. So again, it's our best judgment. Where was he going to get if he had not been obstructed? Umpire judgment. Very, very simple, but crucial again, many times.
Yeah. And when we're awarding bases, be conservative with where you think he would have gotten, right? So he's rounding first, and he goes to the ground, and it's not like a stumble and keep running. It's like a go to the ground. Okay, where was that ball hit? Could he have gotten to third reasonably?
Yep.
Right? Where did he end up after he got back up? Whereas, okay, well, I get barely touched. Are we awarding that base? And remember, we have high school rules. We can't award them first base if they've already rounded first base if they've already obtained first base prior to the obstruction. We have to give them one base beyond their last legally touched base at the time of the obstruction. So be conservative, factor in where would he likely have gone had that not happened. A ball hit directly to a fielder? Well, he's probably going to go back to first, but he got obstructed, so we have to give him second. So give him second base in high school rules. Ball hit the gap, dribbles into the corner. Okay, well, he was going to be at second easy. Do we award him third? What kind of runner is he? You know, is he fast? Is he slow? Did he have a great jump? Was he at second around the time the fielder was picking up the ball, or reasonably close to second by the time the right fielder was picking up the ball in the corner, right? And all those things factor in, and it's not a bad thing to get together with your partner and say, hey, I've got obstruction on this. And you can just, that's obstruction, time, and point back to wherever it occurred. And then you get together with your partner and say, listen, I've got a ball hit into the corner. He got obstructed. Do you have any idea where he was at when the fielder picked up the ball? Yeah, he was, over 2/3 of the way to second base. How big was the obstruction? Well, it made him break stride. Okay, probably just second base. Or, well, bumped him off his path. Or he had to stop and go around, or he got knocked to the ground, or he stumbled. Okay, cool. So he stumbled. He was almost to second base already. 2/3 of the way, 60 feet. Full sprint, you're probably looking at 7 or 8 strides to get to second. Did that knock him 7 or 8 strides off his path? Maybe it did. And you have to factor that in and talk through it and come up with an answer and then award your bases after if you're not sure. That's never a bad thing. But once you award bases, you can't get back together and change it. You can. It just doesn't look as good as if we come out, we get together first, award bases, and then we're done. Hey, coach, we already had a conversation about it. We're not talking about it again. We're on the same page here.
Perfect. And I appreciate your clarification there on the federated rules of they get that base. If there's obstruction, they get that first base. And that's how you said it, correct, Connor?
Yeah, one base beyond their last legally occupied base at time of obstruction.
Right. Yep. And that's an important distinction. So I appreciate your clarifying that. Thanks. Okay. Any other comments or anything on that so far? Then we can move into the meat of things here. Starting with that pitcher. Remember, I had those lines in blue about the pitcher being in touch with the rubber. So if a pitcher with runners on the base and in contact with the rubber throws a live ball out of play, all runners advance 1 base. And again, this can be a pitch that gets away from the catcher and rolls out of play, or it can be a throw, typically a pickoff attempt at first or third, that he's attempting to retire a runner, and he's still in touch with the rubber. Ball goes out of play. It's 1 base from time of pitch, they call that, because he's in touch with the rubber. Okay. The other side of that is if a pitcher with his foot on the rubber disengages from the rubber and throws a live ball out of play. You have a different scenario. All runners advance 2 bases from the time of throw. That pitcher is now considered an infielder. And the throw is considered his second legitimate attempt to retire a runner. So it's 2 bases from the time of throw when we disengage from the rubber. And I've had this happen where as a plate umpire, I maybe couldn't see for sure that he disengaged completely. I might step out and start to place runners, and my partner would say, or I would just call time and talk to my partner to make sure I knew he had disengaged before placing runners. As Connor said, if I give him 2 bases and my partner all of a sudden, hey, we need to talk, we decide, no, he didn't disengage from the rubber, I got to bring runners back. That doesn't look good. So make sure you're together with your partner on that and that you're awarding proper bases. Now we're going to move to a fielder throwing the ball. So when an outfielder throws a live ball, when they throw it out of play, I should say, runners always get 2 bases from the time of throw, always. Does not matter if it's a batted ball, whether he catches a pop fly, whether he catches a grounder, whether it's a ball that's thrown by the pitcher or the catcher or somebody who gets into the outfield. Anytime an outfielder throws the ball out of play, it's 2 bases from time of throw. And Jake actually came across this video yesterday, so I put it in here. And if you listen to the announcers, they'll tell you where the runner is at when this ball is being thrown. It's a fly ball out to right field that bounces. Right fielder catches it, and then he throws the ball in to the infield. So announcers will tell us where the runner is. So here we go.
The one pitch, that's hit towards right center field. A base hit for Braith. He'll round first and hold up there. High throw gets by everybody. Down to second base goes Braith.
Notice how no offensive players in the vicinity of second base
Will determine he gets third as
after
ball
the
goes
throw.
into the dugout.
Okay. So what was that, Jake?
I said, notice how there was no offensive player beyond second base at the time of the throw. I mean, that's
Right.
when I was talking to Connor about this video this morning. The fact, I mean, it's so obvious that we have not had the batter runner legally acquire second base, but almost in this situation, we're going to assume, because frankly, this is the first time I've heard the audio.
Okay.
I sent you this when I was sitting in class yesterday. So I did not listen to the video or audio, excuse me. But he's not at second base. Okay.
Right.
But
Yep.
we'll let it play out and then I'll let you keep going.
Well, and that's all we needed to see on this. As the announcers pointed out, he was just had rounded first when the right fielder threw the ball in. And the announcers actually,
High throw gets by everybody. Down to second base goes Braith.
now he's heading to second base. And then they give him
will
third.
determine he gets third as the ball goes.
The key, maybe one key point to point out here again, he had rounded first, the right fielder threw the ball, and then it goes out of play. It's we place him from the time where the ball was released, when it was thrown by the outfielder. I've seen it happen a lot of times where guys will award it based on when the ball goes out of play, which is not correct. It's when that ball is thrown is the key. And by an outfielder, it's always 2 bases from the time of throw when a live ball goes out of play. So anything else on that, Jake or Connor, Jason, to go to my next video or next slide then?
This award is most like base awards are most likely going to come from the plate umpire, because the
Right.
plate umpire has everything in their field of vision. And this is why we always talk about it's really important for the plate umpire to have a wide vision and a narrow focus. Keep everything in front of you. Work point of plate as often as you can, because you're going to have everything lined up. You're going to have knowledge of the runners, because all the runners are going to be between you and the baseball,
Right.
and you're looking at the baseball, so you can see when that was released and know what base they were at when that throw was made.
Yeah, putting this together really highlighted for me the importance of keeping those eyes out there and watching, watching that big picture, not just focused on where the ball is at this moment, but having that big picture. Okay, now we'll get into the real meat of this, which is I wanted to talk about what happens when a live ball is thrown by an infielder and goes out of play, because we have 2 options. It can be the bases can be awarded from the time of pitch or from the time of throw. And I'm hoping will be a little nugget that we can teach our younger guys. Something I wish I had learned many years ago was, the question is, was this throw the first legitimate attempt by an infielder to retire a runner after the pitch? And after the pitch is quite important. What we have is, if yes, it's the first legitimate attempt to retire a runner after the pitch, then all runners are awarded 2 bases from the time of pitch. If no, it's the second or third attempt or throw to retire a runner, then all runners are awarded 2 bases from time of throw. And we're going to look at actual scenarios here to go through. But before we do, I need to point out that we have to clarify what a play or attempted play is. And it's my understanding that, the college book defines it pretty well, what a play attempt is. But the OBR and Fed rules, from what I've seen and understand, don't clarify as well what a play or attempted play really is. And you guys correct me if I'm wrong on that, but that's my understanding. But if we look at a play is a legitimate effort by a defensive player who possesses the ball to actually retire a runner. That's pretty clear and defined. It can be a tag attempt, running toward a base with the ball in your hand to retire a runner. So an example would be, you've got a guy on third base, ground ball to the shortstop, who takes those couple little hops while he's looking at that runner on third base, but he's not going to throw it over there. He just wants to hold that runner. And then he turns and fires the ball to first base and throws the ball out of play. That throw was the first legal attempt or legitimate attempt to retire a runner. All he was doing with his eyes was holding that runner there. I mean, what was the last thing the coach said before that pitch? Hold the runner at third and take it to first. So that was not a legitimate attempt. Another example would be a runner on first, ball hit to the shortstop. Again, he takes several hard steps towards second base, trying to beat the runner to second base. After the first step or two, he realizes he's not going to get there, and he turns and fires the ball to first base. That throw now is the second legal attempt, because he was truly trying to make an out at second base. Doesn't matter if an out was made or not. That's not relevant. But his first attempt was to beat that guy to second base. The other point on this is, a fake tag or a feint throw does not count as a legal play. Again, I don't think it says that in OBR or Fed rules, but I guess my view is that's still how I would approach it in those games. Comments on that, Connor, Jake?
I think you just got to make sure you just use your judgment. Was that an attempt to make a play on a runner? Yes or no? And you can justify it. I mean, it's hard to judge intent sometimes, but
right?
Yeah. In my judgment,
that
was an attempt to retire a runner. So that's the second play.
Yeah. What I would say is this kind of follows the be conservative with your base awards. The most I've never had a situation where, knock on wood, I've never had a situation where, I've run into the second play, especially where the OBR actually has a case play on it for a second play in the infield. But make them obvious. You'll know an attempted play when you see it. Use good timing use good judgment.
Okay. Perfect. So let's take a look at a couple scenarios here, and hopefully I'll get through these. I only have, I think, 3 of these, but so you've got runners on first and second. They're both stealing on the pitch. Ground ball to the second baseman, who realizes he has no play in the runner at second. He then takes and throws the ball wild into the dugout. Now, R1 has touched second base prior to the throw. That's an important sentence. We're going to come back to that. So here we have it. Runners on first and second. They're both stealing. Obviously had really good jumps. Ball hit to second base. The shortstop also came in to field it. No play at second. He throws the ball out of play at first base, his first throw. So we asked the question, was this throw the first legitimate attempt by an infielder after the pitch to retire a runner? To me, that's a pretty simple thing we can teach our young guys. If yes, it was the first attempt, legitimate attempt, then we award 2 bases to each runner from the time of pitch. So we get R2 scores, R1's at third, and the batter runners at second base. But now we have to remember, we're going to have, once in a while, you run into some coaches that do know the rules or do know some things about baseball, and you're going to have a coach say, but hey, my guy was at second base before he threw the ball. Coach, this throw was the first legitimate attempt by an infielder to retire a runner after the pitch. By rule, all runners are awarded 2 bases from the time of pitch. He's not going to be happy with that, but when we can quote rules to some degree, it'll typically settle them down. But remember that, because his team, we stopped the runner at third base. So in the next scenario, it's the same scenario. The difference is this time, second baseman makes a legitimate tag attempt on R1, but misses the tag. R1 again touches second base prior to the throw, and it gets airmailed into the dugout. So it's the same scenario. The difference is now this was a second legitimate play attempt by an infielder. So again, the runners are stealing. Second baseman fields the ball. You can see there's no tag made. We saw that on video review. And he then fires the ball into the dugout. So this is his second legitimate attempt to retire a runner. So again, we ask our question, was this throw the first legitimate attempt after the pitch to retire a runner? If no, because it was the second, then we award 2 bases to each runner from time of throw. So R1 and R2 are both going to score, and the batter runner is awarded second base. So now that same coach is going to be pissed, and he's going to be out there because last inning you made his guy stop at third base, and he's going to be saying it was the exact same play, and you made my guy stop at first, you cheated me out of a run, and you gave them a free run. Coach, there was a legitimate tag attempt, and this was the throw was the second attempt by an infielder to retire a runner. In this case, our run had touched second base. You're right. He had touched second base prior to the throw, and he is awarded 2 bases from the time of throw. He scores, and the batter runner is at second base. So it's subtle, little different, but it's a huge difference in where we place the runners. Obviously, you're going to have a coach who's not very excited. Hopefully you never have that happen in the same game, especially the same inning, where you have to make those 2 calls. Anything on those 2 before I move on? Because pretty clear scenarios, but what I'm hoping is this little sentence is something that we can teach. Was this the first legitimate attempt by an infielder after the pitch to retire a runner? I think if we can get that in our heads or get the young guys thinking that, it'll make it easier for them. So in this scenario, you got no outs, runners on second and third. the ball is bunted and R3 is stealing on the pitch. Pitcher fields the ball and realizes he has no play at home. So he turns and fires the ball to first, while the batter runner is illegally running in fair territory that last 45 feet. So the batter's lane interference, the runner's lane interference, causes the ball to roll down the right field line into foul territory. It stays in play, and R2 comes around to score. Now, we're going to have a number of things that are going to be running through our minds, and you're going to have coaches each having their own view of what should happen here. But we're going to take a look at this. And, a couple questions are going to be, does the run count? Does R3 go back to third? Does R2, does that run count? Or does he go back to third? Or should he go all the way back to second? Or even you're going to have somebody asking R3's out because of the batter interference. Okay, these are all things that may run through our mind or we're going to hear from a coach. Now, here's where we get to. And I apologize here because on my screen, I'm blocked out. I cannot see the rule. I've got something on my screen I can't get rid of.
Just hit hide.
Just hide will do.
Yep,
I was afraid to do it because I didn't want to hide my whole screen. Okay, so it's we're going to find this rule in OBR. It's 601A11 and the penalty section. And I threw this play in because this concept, or that's not the right way to say it, but I learned how to make this call during our training session down at Dort a month or so ago. And this similar play came up and I called it wrong. So I came home and started studying how this should happen. So R3 scored, then the pitcher threw the ball, but because of the batter runner interference, the ball went wild. It was a good throw, but the interference caused the miscue. Okay, here's where we find this. In the penalty section, it says, if during an intervening play or a previous play at the plate with less than 2 outs, a runner scores, and then the batter runner is called out for interference outside the 3-foot lane, the runner is safe, R3 is safe, and the run shall count. It's he crosses the plate prior to that interference call. That's the key factor. So his run counts. Immediately when you have that batter runner interference, at that point, that is an immediate dead ball, runner interference. So wherever R2 was, he had not scored yet before the interference. So here's what you have. That run scores, and the batter runner is out, and all other runners shall return to the base last occupied at the time of pitch. Why time of pitch? Because in this scenario, the rule is if the batter runner has not yet made it to first base, and we have batter's lane interference, they all return to time of pitch. But R3 had scored before the interference, so his run is always going to count. Previous play, intervening play. So when I did this one, I thought, you know what, though? We need to go one step farther with this explanation, because what happens if the interference occurs after the batter runner is beyond first base? Because it changes the call. And here's the rule. Well, here's the example. Again, you have runners in second and third, same basic example, except this time there's no runner's lane interference or batter's lane interference. R3 scores, but then after the batter runner rounds first base, he then attempts to return to first. And he comes in standing up and he collides with the first baseman who is receiving the throw from the right fielder. We now have batter's runner interference after first base. and after R3 has scored and before R2 scores. Okay, so R3 scores, then the batter is coming back into first and he collides with the first baseman, interfering with him receiving that ball from the right fielder. Okay, R2 is not yet scored. Here's what we have in this case. It changes it after first base. If the umpire declares the batter runner, or a runner out for interference at or beyond first base, all other runners shall return to the last base that was in the judgment of the umpire, legally touched at the time of interference. At the time the interference occurred, again, R3 had scored. You cannot take that away from him with less than 2 outs. R2 had rounded third but had not yet scored, so he goes back to third base. See that difference? Before, if it's the batter runner before first base, all runners return to their previous base. If the batter runner interference is after first base or any other runner interference, where were the runners located when the interference occurred? Okay, hopefully that didn't get too boggled in there, but I really felt, we need to be aware of both scenarios, how they change, those subtle little differences. So any comments on that stuff? And I think that pretty much wrap us up. So any comments there, guys?
Yeah, intervening plays. I'm going to talk as briefly as I can on this because they are tricky. I'm going to try to condense it down as much as possible. So, can you go back a slide, Brad?
You bet.
So we have an intervening play where we have an attempt to retire R3. R3 is ruled safe, and then we make a play on the batter runner who's called out for a runner's line interference. So, because we attempted a play on R3 via throw, a tag, or an attempted tag, that result of that play, or the result of that particular play or attempted play, stands. And then we have runner's line interference on the batter runner. The batter runner is going to be out. R3 is going to score, and R2 would go back to wherever they started this play, which was second base. Now, with 2 outs, we have an intervening play, and we have runners line interference. We're not going to score R3 because the last out of the inning was recorded by the batter runner failing to reach first base safely.
Right.
So we would not score the run in that case, which is very rare. And intervening plays don't happen a ton, except for like bunt plays or comebackers, right? Where we have something like this. But it's very tricky, and you have to really just slow down and process, okay, what actually happened? Was there an attempted play on R3? Okay, yes. They go there. Or they play at third, right? He reaches third safely. And then we have some, I guess our throw wouldn't matter. Really, the only time an intervening play is going to come into play is a play at the plate and then a play at first base.
Right.
So just slow down, process, think about all of your rules and your definitions and why you're scoring a run or not scoring a run, and then adjudicate the play. Take your time on these because these are very tricky. There's a lot that goes into these, and you probably want to, like, if I know what I have 100%, I'm going to come out and I'm going to own it and I'm going to bang it and I'm going to go XYZ. This is the result of the play. If I'm not 100% sure, I'm going to call the interference, call time, and then get together with my partner. I'm going to call the interference, call time, and I'm going to go. And then I'm going to come out and decide whether or not that run scores. Because then I've already answered the question of, can you go get help? Right. It's very tricky. You need to process the play. And I'm probably going to be like, that's interference, time, nobody move. And tell people to just stop. And stand wherever you need to stand. And then I'm going to look at R2 and go, you go back to third base and stand there because you haven't scored yet. You go stand on third base. Batter runner, you go stand on first. Okay. I'm going to get to my partner. Listen, I've got an attempted play on R3 at the plate. He's safe. Then I've got runners on interference. He's out. Is a third out? No. Okay, then we're going to score that run. Oh, that's a third out? Okay, we're not going to score that run. So here's what we've got. We got an intervening play, runners on interference. So the run R3 is going to score. R2 is going to go back to second because they last occupied that at the time of pitch. And the batter runner is going to be out. Cool. Got it. Everybody's on the same page. All right. So I'm going to turn around. I'm going to point to R3. You score. Hopefully he's still standing in the dirt circle. Point to R2. You go back to second base. Point to batter runner. You're out for interference. Or I might go, you score. Batter runner, you're out for interference. Due to the interference, R2, you're back at second base. And do whatever order makes sense to you.
Yep.
And then be ready to explain it to the coach.
Yep.
Because it's very tricky. And coach, I want to make sure I get this right before I came out with anything.
Right.
I don't want to make you upset for no reason. And usually they appreciate that, right? I don't want to make you upset because I was wrong and then go change it. Whereas I can get it right now. And it's a play that doesn't happen very often. So slow down, talk it through, and process the entire play from start to finish. Make it make sense to you, make it make sense to your partner, and come out with a plan of how you're going to adjudicate the play and also how you're going to explain the play, because you're going to need to explain this one.
Yep. And it's a good point. Coaches appreciate if you stop them because you want to talk to your partner first. Most often they'll appreciate that. Again, we're attempting to get it right.
I would say when we're able to get together before a coach comes out, it shows you're hustling and it shows you're working. And I think it truly does give you a little more grace, but know when you can get together. And know when you have to have a coach request you get together.
Coaches talk a lot
Good
about
point.
feel for the game, and getting together before the coach requests you to is part of that feel for the game, right? I'm missing something important on this play. And you feel the pressure rise a little bit. Everybody's blood pressure rises. And you're like, whoa, something's weird. Something's off. We're going to get together on our own because we can get together. And it might be something as simple as, hey, this is weird. This is what I have. Do you have anything different? No? Okay, cool. We come out, point, confirm call, and then beeline straight to the coach.
Right.
Because they're going to want an explanation. But if we know that we've got something weird and we sense the crowd, the dugouts are getting ready to burn to the ground, there's no issue with calling time. If we sense that and we think we may have gotten it right or may have gotten it wrong. If you're 100% sure you got it right, let them burn. But if there's any doubt in your mind that something happened weird, players react weird, those things sometimes take, and ground balls off the foot of the batter, right? They take time. And I tell coaches all the time, I'm like, how come you didn't get that right away? Well, coach, I'm not very good at math. Huh? Well, the ground ball looked like it might have done that. Wasn't 100% sure. Replayed what happened in my mind. Everybody else gave up on that play. Everybody. Which tells me that everybody else thinks it was a foul ball. So why do I want to be the only one that doesn't? And usually they're like, okay, that makes sense. Because when the ball goes up the foot of the batter or it's weird, everybody stops. And you can slow yourself down enough to process that and then act abruptly when you realize everybody else thinks it's a foul ball. Why shouldn't I? And the answer is, I shouldn't. Boom, time. That's a foul ball. Got him in the box. Because everybody else responds like what happened. Don't be the only one that thinks it didn't.
Good point. Any other additions or questions? If not, that is just wraps her up for the day. And if there were any comments or anything there, we'll can address them, I guess. But otherwise, that's all I had. Thanks, guys.
Thanks, Brad.
Yeah, thanks for
and-
presenting.
Yeah, thanks for everybody for sticking around with us here. I know we're a little over time, but this is not a simple topic. So appreciate everybody sticking around for it. Next week, we are going to have a fantastic presentation on one of the NFHS points of emphasis, collision rules. We have videos. So hope to see you all next week. We will discuss the finer points of collision rules. What is malicious contact? And yeah, we'll go from there. I'll stop the recording here. Have a good week, everybody.